Well, we're here tonight to talk about the CSRD's Electoral Area F issues identification study. Some of you may know that we did have two in-person town halls or open houses in January, on January 20th to be exact, actually, which is a Saturday. We had one at Anglemont and we had one at Solista, the two different community halls there. We had some really good turnout and some really good questions and some good shared discussions. So this particular event this evening was requested by folks both online and at those events so that we could make sure that everybody who didn't have an opportunity to come to the ones in person in the North Shuswap had an opportunity to come online. There is, as I mentioned, a website where we have lots more information, and I'll refer you to that a little bit later in the presentation. But let's jump in if we could, and I'm going to go through just an overview of what it is we're going to be talking about this evening. And you'll notice, by the way, just on the right-hand side of the screen there, that is a copy of the front page of the overview document that everybody should have received in the mail. If you don't have a copy of that in the mail, don't worry. You can download a copy of that through the website, which again, I will refer to a bit later. But this evening, we're going to talk about the study and the purpose of the study. We're going to talk about local government today in Area F, the North Shuswap. We'll look at the services that are provided, primarily by the CSRD, but some other service providers as well. Governance, so who makes decisions, all about kind of sharing of control, really, over local decisions. And cost to taxpayers being obviously a very important consideration that most folks have. We'll talk about that a little bit, and then we'll get into the next steps in the study. We're going to go through all of this because really what it is we want to do today is outline how we are currently governed and how we are currently get our services in North Shuswap, and then kind of what changes may be possible within that framework to address some of the issues that you and that others may bring up over the course of our discussion. As we go through the presentation, I'd like you to just reflect on a few questions that we'll come back to at the end of our discussion. The first is, do you receive all of the local services you need? So as we go through the presentation, think about that. Think about as well the question as to whether you feel that you receive good value for the property taxes that you pay. Do you think that North Shuswap's residents have enough input into service decisions? That's another question that I'd like you just to ponder as we go through the presentation. Let's jump now into the study itself, the Area F Issues Identification Study. We've got a threefold purpose for this study, three reasons we're doing this. One is to document and to assess what's in place today. That is the current governance system that we have in Area F and the services and service provision. So we want to understand what is in place today. And it's important to kind of lay that out because there actually are a whole bunch of different views out there about kind of how things work, how things are supposed to work today. So we want to all get on the same page, as it were. We want to then understand the concerns and the interests. This is the second purpose of the study. So the study really to ferret out some of the concerns and the interests that residents in Area F may have with respect to the governance and the services that are provided. And then to address those concerns, we want to identify changes that we can make within the existing regional district system. It's important to emphasize that phrase, within the existing regional district system. We are an electoral area within the CSRD. That means we're unincorporated. We're not a municipality, we're an electoral area. Within the purpose of this study is not to consider changes to our unincorporated status. That is, in other words, we're not looking at an incorporation study. We're not going to be focused on incorporation as an option coming out of this study. Whether incorporation becomes an option to address or to consider is a question for a little bit down the road. Our focus really is to look at the existing system, which features North Shuswaps and the communities that comprise North Shuswap as an unincorporated area, Area F. And within that framework, what kinds of changes can we make to services, to governance, and other kinds of changes to address the concerns that are raised? What is that local government system that we have in place today? We'll kind of on the same page with respect to that. Well, as you know, we are an electoral area, and we see that electoral area. It's one of 8 within the North Shuswap. We've got a whole bunch of different communities within Area F, Lee Creek in the west, Scotch Creek, Solista, Magda Bay, Anglemont, St. Ives, all the way up to Seymour Arm in the north there. So we've got a collection of unincorporated communities all contained within an electoral area. We are one, as I mentioned, of one of eight electoral areas within the North Shuswap. And the North Shuswap, though, or within, I beg your pardon, within the Columbia Shuswap Regional District. And the CSRD as a regional district is a federation. It's a federation of different jurisdictions, local jurisdictions. Some of those jurisdictions are municipalities. We've got 4 municipalities. So we've got Salmon Arm is the largest. We've got Sycamus, Revelstoke, and Golden. And then we've got our electoral areas. We are one of those electoral areas within that federation. Federation of 7 electoral areas, and governed by a board of directors. So in a municipality, the governing body is the municipal council. In a regional district, the governing body is the board of directors. Our governing body has a total of 12 members on it. So we've got one electoral area director from each electoral area, including Area F, and we've got 5 municipal directors representing the municipalities in the federation. 2 of those members are from Salmon Arm, and we'll talk about why Salmon Arm has 2 a little bit later. And then one of those directors is from each of Golden, Revelstoke, and Sycamus. One of the purposes, really the main purpose of regional districts, and indeed of all governments, whether we're talking about municipalities, regional districts, provincial governments, or federal governments, is to provide services in response to the needs of citizens. And when we look at regional districts, indeed, its purpose, or the regional district's purpose, they really exist to provide services in response to the needs of the members, the jurisdictions that comprise the federation, so the electoral areas and the municipalities. And there are 3 different types of services that regional districts provide. The first are what are called local services. And those are local services provided to the unincorporated areas, to electoral areas. There are 14 of those services in Area F. Those would be services such as local utilities, water utilities. They would be local planning, local administration, those kinds of things. Parks, for example, is another local service provided by the regional district to the electoral area. We have region-wide services, another type of service within the regional districts and provided by regional districts. Those are services such as regional parks, for example, those regional solid waste management planning, those types of services that are provided throughout the entire region to all jurisdictions, all 4 municipalities, and all electoral areas. We've also got sub-regional services. We have 19 of those in Area F, everything from economic development to electoral area planning is another one, to a number of different services that are provided within Area F. And sub-regional services are services that are provided to any combination of jurisdictions. I noted earlier that we've got 11 jurisdictions, 7 electoral areas, and 4 municipalities. Any 2 of those jurisdictions, whether it's a municipality or an electoral area, can come together, and if they choose together then to receive through the regional district a service, that service becomes a sub-regional service. So any combination of jurisdictions are the focus of sub-regional services. So local services provided just to electoral areas, and in our case to an electoral area, Area F. Region-wide services provided all across the region to all members, and then sub-regional services provided to subsets of members. The regional district is the primary service provider, but not the only service provider. So we also have in regional districts 2 unincorporated areas. We have the province of British Columbia providing different local services. And there are some key services provided by the province. The first one is local roads. And kind of related to local roads, we have subdivision approval. But local roads, very important to understand that when we are in an electoral area, the road system is owned by the provincial government and provided by the provincial government. So all of your snow clearing, all of your street clearing, all of your road maintenance, all of your pothole fixing, that's all the responsibility of the provincial government through the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. If we were in a municipality, irrespective of the size of the municipality, it would be the council that would be responsible for local roads, for all snow clearing and everything related to local roads. The it's an important point to make because local roads tend to be one of the more expensive services to provide. And so they are more expensive within municipalities where the municipality owns and provides the roads and maintains the roads. Local policing is another service provided by the provincial government to every electoral area, every unincorporated area. And in fact, every small municipality with fewer than 5,000 people, the province also provides policing to those areas. Now, when we have larger municipalities, we'll still see RCMP, for example, and so forth. And the province will, by contract, will provide that policing service using the RCMP to a municipality, to a larger municipality. But it is the municipality that's responsible for providing the service and that pays for the service. So local policing in an unincorporated area, local roads in an unincorporated area, those are provincial service responsibilities. We also have the province providing a number of different provincial parks. We have several of those within North Shuswaps and recreation sites as well. And we also get ambulance and education and healthcare in all of the unincorporated areas. And so those are provincial responsibilities. So we've got the CSRD as the regional district as the primary service provider, and then we've got the province as another service provider. We have private services too, and those really take the form of water systems in the CSRD and in Area F in particular. And within Area F, we have 50 different small private water systems. We have 3 large public water systems, but we have 50 small private water systems. So all of those different services are provided. If we focus on the regional district as the main service provider, it's useful just to kind of think about how the system is intended to work with respect to providing services. Because remember, one of the things I mentioned at the outset was that when we think about the purpose of the regional district, it fundamentally exists to provide services that meet the needs of its member jurisdictions. In our case, of Electoral Area F, but of all the member jurisdictions within the CSRD. Now, when we think about the 3 different types of services that regional districts are responsible for providing, we have regional, local, and sub-regional. This diagram really it's a very simple diagram, of course. It's intended simply to kind of demonstrate those 3 different types of services within the regional district system. When we switch to this slide, we see a different regional district, and we notice the size, the respective size or the relative size of each of those service balls or circles has changed. And that's because the regional district system is designed to be flexible enough to respond to the needs of its members. So in some jurisdictions, in some regional districts, you're going to have more emphasis and more of a need for local services as opposed to regional services or sub-regional. So when we look at this particular regional district that we're showing here on screen, this is Fraser Fort George. So Prince George at the center, many small municipalities, many electoral areas as well. The electoral areas are large, they're vast in terms of geography, very small in terms of population. They have local service needs that particular regional district caters to in a very big way. That particular regional district has very few regional services because it's such a large geographic area with different needs within there. There's not a lot that the region does region-wide. Sub-regional, there's a few more services there than regional ones, but not a lot. So we see here that the regional district system is intended to put the focus where it's most needed. In this particular regional district, at the local. In this regional district, we have a different situation. This is the Kootenay Boundary Regional District. There we have 2 very distinct subregions, one around Grand Forks and one around Trail, and all the jurisdictions around those 2 cities. There, because we have such distinct subregions, we see the regional district being called upon by its members to provide more sub-regional services compared to regional services or local services. So again, the system allows for that focus to shift from other service types to the sub-regional. Metro Vancouver, Greater Vancouver, 21 municipalities, 1 electoral area. There we have the emphasis very clearly on regional. So there are many large regional services provided regional-wide. So whether we're talking about water systems, sewer systems, regional parks, regional air quality, regional planning, those kinds of things. all at the regional level, because that's what those members in that particular regional district need. They don't need the local services of the sub-regional because they have very large municipalities that have to deal with all of those on their own. So we have very few local, very few sub-regional, but lots of regional. Central Okanagan, where I'm from, and I'll mention there's two slides here. We've got our local services. This service, I beg your pardon, this slide was pre-2007. So before 2007, in the Central Okanagan area, we had Kelowna, we had Peachland, and we had Lake Country, and then we had electoral areas. West Kelowna, with 30,000 people, didn't exist as a municipality. So in that case, in 2007, we had the regional district really focused on providing local services primarily to what is today West Kelowna, or what the West Side, as it was known at the time. So local services predominated, sub-regional were second, and very few regional services. In 2007, West Kelowna was incorporated. It became a municipality and took responsibility for a lot of the local services. So today we see more a situation like this, where in the Central Okanagan, very few local services, very few sub-regional services, but more regional services. Here we are in the CSRD, and we can just kind of, this is not a scientific kind of calculation of the relative size of the service spheres, but we can get a sense here of where our focus lies within the CSRD. We have very few regional services. We've got a vast geographic area within the regional district. We've got very distinctive entities, members within the regional district. So there's not a lot of need or desire for broad regional services. There are lots of sub-regional services, however, because we have some key sub-regions where different combinations of jurisdictions decide to use the regional district to provide shared service needs. And then we have some local as well to our electoral areas. Okay, that gives a sense of kind of the service purpose of regional districts and what's important to understand about the model. And more importantly, I think how we as residents in the model, when a jurisdiction in the model, can look to the regional district to provide services that are most needed for our particular area, because regional districts respond to the needs of members and the instructions of members as well. Most of the services provided by regional districts are voluntary. That means they're not mandatory services that we must receive. We choose to receive them. Some are mandatory, but most of them are voluntary. So we buy into services that we need, and we don't buy into services that we don't need. Governance is all about decision-making. So when we talk about governance, we're talking about decision-making. Who's involved in making the decisions and how the decisions are made. And when we boil it down, when we talk about governance and when we're talking about decision-making, we're really talking about control. So how control is shared and how it's exercised. Let's start with who's involved in making decisions. We have two different types of regional district directors at a board table, because the board, the governing body, as we mentioned earlier, is the board of directors, and is comprised of, in our case, 12 directors, and there are two types of directors. The first is electoral area directors, and the second are municipal directors. Electoral area directors are directly elected by voters within the areas that they represent, the directors represent. So you've got one director for Area F, and you, as voters in Area F, directly elect that individual. Municipalities or municipal directors are appointed by their councils. So they are responsible and accountable to their councils, not to their electors, not to the voters in their jurisdictions. You don't, in a municipality, you vote for your councillor, you don't vote for your regional district director. The council appoints that director. No matter, those are the directors, then the electoral area directors, the municipal directors, they get to the board in different ways. One is directly elected, one is appointed. Once they're at the board table, they have the same powers as individual directors. No difference there whatsoever. Each electoral area gets one director, and that's regardless of the size of the electoral area. Whether it's a super populated area or a super large area in terms of geography, each electoral area gets one director, regardless of size. Municipalities may have more than one director, however, based on size. So that's why when we see Salmon Arm, we have 2 directors. So how do we determine the number of directors for each jurisdiction? We need to consider 2 things. One is, and for each municipality really, jurisdiction's population and what's called the voting unit. We have a voting unit of 2,500 people. That means that for every 2,500 people in a weighted vote situation, and we'll talk about that in a moment, a director gets 1 vote. Our electoral area directors, we've got 1 from each electoral area, and we've got 5 for municipalities. So let's look at, we'll look back in a moment here or we'll look ahead at a moment here, I should say, just in kind of how voting is done. But when we look at our layout here of the different size and the number of directors, we see that Salmon Arm has 2 because of the population of Salmon Arm. In a municipality, every director, an individual municipal director, can only have 5 votes. Once we exceed 5 votes, and remember, 1 vote for every 2,500 people in a weighted situation. Once we exceed that number, we appoint another director. That same rule, it doesn't apply to electoral areas. So electoral areas only get that once they choose to incorporate and to become municipal directors. When we look at how control is exercised, then we do that through voting. So voting is the mechanism at the board table for exercising control, for making decisions. There are 3 different types of votes in the regional district system. It's a very different system than in municipalities. In a municipality, you have 1 vote per director or per councillor, per member of council, and every council member votes on every matter. So it's a straight majority. Every council member votes, and every council member gets 1 vote. In a regional district, it's a different system. We have 3 different types of votes. We have, first of all, what are called corporate unweighted votes. These are votes in which every director at the table gets 1 vote, and every director gets to vote. These votes are taken to make decisions on whether to establish a new service, on making rules on how the board is going to operate as a board, those kinds of things. So corporate matters that are important to the corporation. 1 vote, everybody votes. Corporate weighted votes are different. Those are votes in which the number of votes exercised by an individual director is varied based on the population of the jurisdiction the director represents. So a more populated jurisdiction, the director will have more votes, they'll have a greater weight in the voting than a director from a less populated jurisdiction. So weighted votes are done for money matters. Weighted votes are taken by the board to every director votes, but every director gets a different number of votes. So weighted votes then are taken to make decisions on passing budgets, on buying and selling lands, on borrowing matters, on those types of money matters. Stakeholder weighted votes or stakeholder votes, and they're all weighted. Stakeholder votes are taken to administer a service, to make decisions for a service that is sub-regional in nature. So when we have a service that doesn't include every jurisdiction from the regional district, we use a stakeholder weighted vote for most of our issues and for most of our decisions. And those votes are taken for example, any policy matters to any bylaw matters to deal with a particular service that is in place that is only delivered to a small number or a subset of the regional district. And only those directors from jurisdictions that participate in the service get to vote. And the number of votes for each director from one of those jurisdictions depends again on the population of the jurisdiction. We have one other rule that applies to voting within regional districts, and that is that if a service is provided to only one jurisdiction or a part of one jurisdiction, so if it's a local service, for example, that's provided only to Area F, which could be a park service, it could be a water service, or could be some other type of service that is provided only to Area F, the whole board will vote on that, and they'll vote through a corporate unweighted vote. And we involve the whole board in those decisions because in our system, we don't have one individual making a decision. So if the decision is up to one director, because that's the only jurisdiction participating in the service, the entire board votes. So what all of these rules taken together mean when we look at our different types of votes and we look at the fact that if it's a single jurisdiction, everybody votes, what all of these different votes mean is that on every matter that is decided upon for Area F, or for that matter, for any of the other electoral areas, for every matter that is decided upon, that decision involves elected officials from other jurisdictions. So we never have a case in Area F in which a decision is made just by Area F. It always involves elected officials from other jurisdictions. And that rule applies not only to all electoral areas within the regional district, but it applies, in fact, to all regional districts throughout the province. So it's a feature of the system. It recognizes that we are dealing with federations in which jurisdictions have chosen to come together or been put together to share decision making, share how they pay for services, share the services they receive. And as part of that system and the sharing of decision making, we have jurisdictions, we have directors from jurisdictions other than the one in which we are located, participating in decisions that affect that one jurisdiction. Here is a just a little bit of a graph to show, or a table, just to show the CSRD and give a sense of the number of directors and also the weighted votes and how those work. So if we look at Area F, which is highlighted in green, we see our population from the 2021 census of 3611. That is, by the way, the permanent population. Our population in the summer months, the seasonal population, is quite a bit larger than that. We don't, however, count that for the purpose of determining how much strength there is or what the weighted vote is for Area F. But because we're 3611 permanent population, that's over 2,500 voting units. So we get a strength of 2 votes in a weighted voting situation. We have 1 director. When we look down the list there, we get right to the bottom of Salmon Arm, almost 20,000 people. That translates into 8 different votes. So if we think of kind of 20,000 divided by 2,500 and then round that up, it comes to 8 distinct votes in a weighted vote situation. And that then, because we can't have a municipal director who can exercise more than 5 votes, we split those in half and we have 2 directors. So you get a sense there of the number of directors and the strength of voting, or the weighted vote that is allocated to each director. These charts here simply kind of show the weighted, or show kind of how it works with the unweighted and the weighted. So on the unweighted on the left, this is the pie, the pie chart here, and the slices of the pie, if you will, simply based on the fact that in an unweighted vote situation for corporate votes, we have 1 director, every director votes, and every director gets 1 vote. So we see then that we have for Sicamous, Golden, Area A's, B, C, D, E, F, G, and Revelstoke, we have the same weight, the same kind of contribution to those votes. Salmon Arm gets double the contribution of any other individual jurisdiction because of the size of the jurisdiction, but it doesn't have the opportunity. Nobody in that situation has the opportunity to kind of call the day, as it would, to kind of decide the matter. In weighted vote situations, we see a little bit of a different distribution of power there. We see Area F with about 7% of the total voting power there, based on weighted votes. Again, the number of votes that Area F has relative to those of others. Salmon Arm gets more at about 28%, but we don't see any individual jurisdiction being able to dominate the decision making in those weighted voting situations. So we see a fairly good distribution of power in the federation, which is a good feature for the CSRD, because we see in some other jurisdictions where an individual municipality typically will have a very high degree of concentrated power in decision making. We don't have that in the case of our regional district. The cost is, we've talked about service provision. We've talked first of all about the local government and how it's structured. We've talked about the service provision role and being central to the regional district. And then we've talked about governance, how we make decisions and exercise that control, and how we share control. Now we talk about the cost, which is kind of the 4th element, the 4th of 4 elements that we'll talk about the current system. This document here represents a tax notice for a resident in Area F valued at or assessed at $500,000. Now, nobody has an exact $500,000 assessment. We appreciate that, but we came up with a $500,000 assessment. Oh, I beg your pardon. This assessment is not $500,000. This is, what have we got here? it says it. I beg your pardon. We will come back to that in a moment. Anyway, this number here, this household here, a sample property tax is for a representative North Shuswap property residence. So this residence, we've taken all of the different values, assessed values of residential properties, so land and house in the North Shuswap, and we've divided that to find an average, and we've been able to come up with this particular representative household to demonstrate kind of how much in 2023 it has cost this particular household to receive the services in Area F. One of the things you'll notice before we kind of look at the numbers, and this, by the way, it's hard to kind of focus on screen here, but this is taken right out of the overview document. Irrespective of the details on the numbers, one of the things I'd like to point out is simply the number of services you see listed here and the fact that it's all itemized. One of the features of a regional district is that everything must be itemized. Every service must be accounted for within its own service account. And there are firewalls separating one account from all the other accounts. So all of the accounts are separated by firewalls. And that means that monies cannot flow from one service to another service. It also means that every service, the cost of each individual service must be fully recovered by taxes, user fees, whatever revenues need to be raised by the regional district to cover the full cost of providing an individual service. And that full cost is not only the labor and the materials that go into an individual service, but also a portion of the overhead that exists to support the provision of that service. So a portion of the board's time, a portion of the finance department, a portion of the administration department, those kinds of costs. So everything gets put into an individual account for each service. And that's a very transparent way of providing budget information because it says exactly what each service that a regional district electoral area gets costs to the taxpayers. It's much different than it is in a municipality. In a municipality, we have what's called a general revenue fund and a general municipal tax rate. One tax rate will be applied to households or to all property owners in a municipality. They'll pay that rate. The council will take that money and will determine how to distribute it among the different service responsibilities. Regional boards don't have that luxury. Regional boards have to identify, as we see here on this sheet, for every individual service, the tax rate that is going to charge for that service and the money it's going to receive in response to that tax rate, and then how that money is going to be used to offset entirely the cost associated with that service. So in a regional district, in an electoral area, you know exactly what it is you're getting, what it is you're paying for, and you also know what you're not getting and what you're not paying for because it's not on your tax notice. We won't go through the detailed numbers on this one. It is, as I noted, in your overview document. There's another copy on the website too, but it simply just demonstrates kind of the types of services you're getting, the local in electoral area F, the broad region wide, the provincial services, and so forth that you get and that you pay for. Let me end just the presentation part just by talking about next steps in this study. So we have an online survey that's available until the end of February. That's available on the website for the study, and I'll come to that in a moment. I really encourage everybody to take a moment to fill that out if you haven't. It takes about 15 minutes to go through and do it. It's a very simple survey to fill out, very easy and user-friendly format. There's a spot on that survey, to add comments that if you feel that the questions aren't getting at what you would like to express, please take advantage of the comment section where you can write as much or as little as you wish. All of that information will be compiled when it comes in at the end of February, and it will only go to me and to Isabel as the consultants on this study. I should mention that we're hired by the CSRD to work on the study, but we're paid for by the province. And we're paid for by the province because these types of studies, studies that deal with how to structure and how to address challenges within the local government system, those matters are the responsibility of the provincial government. So we are paid for by the province. All that information comes to us. It will be compiled and form part of our report, which will go to, at the end of March, to the CSRD board, but also to the province. So The province gets it at the same time the CSRD board gets it. It will come from me as an individual, as an independent consultant, and will outline all of the issues that have been brought to our attention with respect to services and governance. All of the materials that you see referred to today, the overview documents, there's poster boards as well, there's background materials, there's this presentation. All of those materials are available online, so encourage you to please go and have a look at those if you wish. Here is the space, or here is the website that I talked about. I've referred to a number of times. So csrdcivilspace.io. And indeed, if you simply go online and Google Area F CSRD, you will see this study. You'll get to this space, and that's where all the information is. Earlier, I talked about some ideas, some questions to reflect upon, and those questions come right out of the overhead, or the overview document, I should say. And those questions, you may recall, were dealt with whether or not you receive the services that you need, how you feel your value for money is. Do you feel you get good value for money for the taxes you pay for the services? And do you feel that you get good input into decision making for the services that you receive and for the governance in your electoral area? So let's kind of pause there, and thank you for indulging me and taking some moment to taking a good half hour or so to listen to me and as I went through those slides. Thank you for allowing me to go through those. I'd like now to open it up to questions. And as I noted earlier, we'll stay as long as you'd like us to answer questions about the study, about the type of local government that's in place in Area F, and about the changes that may be possible to address some of the issues that may be raised in the discussion we're about to have. So I'll pause there, and I'm going to ask Isabel then to kind of monitor hands that may go up, and also to look at the chat box, and we will make sure that everything is addressed.
Thank you, Alan. So right now, I do not see anything in the chat box yet. Let me have a look here. And just as a reminder for everyone, if you don't remember how to raise your hand, or if you're not familiar with Zoom, it's down in the reactions. Yep, we have someone here who wants to ask a question. Yep, go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, am I unmuted?
You are unmuted.
We got you, Jeff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Good. I just found out something today that I don't know how the way it's being handled. I don't think is correct. I don't know whether that could be changed in the whole this need study, but within Scotch Creek, we have bylaw 825, and under there, there's a zoning of C1, and that one there has been a major, I don't know, screw up. I'm going to say politely, because people can put a residential on the main road, and now there is a person that is putting in a new mini storage on the main road, and under C1 it is allowed. But under bylaw 830, which is official community plan, that is considered village center. And village center is, it's got a form and character, and what they're planning on doing there doesn't meet any of the 11 points under this village 13.5 village center permit area. And so I hate saying no to development, but on the main road, I don't think we should have mini storages on the main road or industrial on the main road. And there is another thing that has come out with on Kenwood Gate. They're wanting to change it to industrial right up to the main highway. All the people on that street have been told that they should change it because under the official community plan, bylaw 30, it is set out as a land use concept as industrial. And we got these two bylaws, 830 and 825, that don't talk to each other. Or now we're going to be having a mini storage right on the main road. And, we could have that on every property on the main road unless we
Mhm.
start enforcing the OCP or doing
Mhm.
something like that. Do you understand what I'm coming from on that?
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you, Jeff, for that commentary and kind of and the question in there a little bit of kind of how do we kind of address that? What kind of change can we or can we change that within and can we raise that through this study? And for sure, yes, something we can raise through this study by all means, because one of the things we want to get at in this study is what are the concerns we have with services, with governance, with cost, those kinds of items. So we have two bylaws, as you mentioned, in place right now from a land use perspective. One is the policy bylaw, or the OCP, so 830, I think you mentioned. And then we have the regulatory bylaw, the zoning bylaw, so 825. In a perfect world, those two, to use your term, they're going to talk to each other. So and in fact, one is going to be consistent with the other. So the policy document, the OCP, really is intended to set the framework within which the regulations are to be applied and with which they're to be consistent. The regulations, however, need to kind of be changed in order to. So when an OCP is changed, or when a municipal, I beg your pardon, when a regional district or local government comes out with a new OCP, we often have a bit of a lag period to bring up to speed and to correct or to kind of bring into compliance the zoning bylaw. That zoning bylaw is that exists before it's changed is the one that takes force because those are the regulations. So we've got a little bit of it sounds like from the description that you've given us, Jeff, we've got a little bit of a mismatch there, and it's causing some angst. One of the remedies to do that or to kind of address that, to consider that issue and to address that issue is to to raise the issue through a mechanism that allows planning issues to come to the director and through the director to the board. We have had in the past an advisory planning commission, I believe, for Area F. I don't think I think it's been on hold for a little bit now. Maybe Jay can just kind of comment on that or confirm that. But we have had an advisory planning commission in the past, and that would be a body that would be ideal to raise these planning concerns through the director to the board and to give advice to the director and to the board from a local perspective on what's important for planning for that area. Because advisory planning commissions, they are set up under the Local Government Act, so they have some statutory basis. They're set up by bylaw within the regional district, and they're there to address these very kinds of issues, these concerns that arise. So I think one of the things we may kind of look at then and address or identify it as a potential remedy, and this is something that would be reflected in my report, is kind of look at that APC, look at that advisory planning commission, and is that a mechanism that can be brought back? And yeah, just look. Sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
With even in the APC, there is. They do say that they're advisory position, but it could be totally overruled by area director and the board and everything like that. So that's a level that is sort of just like a bureaucratic stupidity when you like we
Well,
gotta
it
get
can't.
something like, and now you look at the OCP, it came out
Yeah,
15 years ago
yeah,
saying that it's going to be village center. And now
yeah,
already we're in the process of putting this mini storage on the main road. I think they've
yeah,
got the building permit in place. They're doing metal cladding, and
yeah,
there's a whole bunch of stuff. And I don't want to piss the developer off because at least somebody's spending something here. But
yeah,
once you put in that mini storage, it's never going to be developed to change to something else. That's going to be like
yeah.
that for as long as I'm alive.
Yeah, it is, and if we look at kind of how decisions are made, and because one person may loathe the idea of mini storage, one person may love it, but if we look at kind of how the community makes decisions around that, you're quite right to point out kind of the bylaw basis on what's allowed and what isn't, what's permitted and what isn't. But also the APC, I don't think it's fair to dismiss it right away as simply an advisory body, because yes, it is advisory, but if folks were interested in sitting on an APC and kind of reforming that APC, that does carry, APCs tend to carry some clout. So they are advisory, but they're advice that has to be listened to, because it's a formal mechanism for getting the community's views into the mix. And the director's view, there are another one. Sorry?
I was just going to say that Jay added something in the comment saying the APC is
Thank you.
not in place at this time, not enough interest from the public, and too few council members.
So yes, okay, thank you. That's helpful context, because that is that does then, if we, the APC has a mechanism to bring that voice in to the decision making, the discussion. If we don't have an interest in sitting on it, then we're kind of limited in how we can influence and inform those changes. So maybe that's something for the community to think about.
So with not enough people on this board, on the APC board, then it's a free-for-all right now.
Well, a free for all within the context, however, it is constrained by and guided by the regulations that are in place now. And the regulations, I don't have it in front of me, but I'll take your word for it, Jeff, that they allow a particular type of development that you and some others may not like. I get that. But I wouldn't say it's a free for all. It's just kind of operating by a set of rules or under a set of regulations that don't find favor with everybody. And so that kind of comes back to how we as a community make decisions, and the APC being one mechanism to kind of influence that.
There is a couple other piece of properties that are owned by people that want to put mini storage on the main road as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why don't we just call it, you know, Scotch Creek mini storage or whatever? It doesn't really, there is some tourist people that like to use that, or regular people that are locals that would use that. I think that it,
Yeah.
growth in our community, I don't think it's a super growth thing. And then,
Yeah, and those are all legitimate perspectives. And one thing I would just encourage everybody just to kind of think about when we hear those perspectives is, okay, how do we get those perspectives into the discussion and ultimately into bylaw changes, if that's what they end up being? And there are different ways to do that. I mean, one is through this kind of forum here. Another, though, is through a mechanism like the APC, and another is simply through a rezoning bylaw or a zoning bylaw amendment or a zoning bylaw update that has to have a public consultation component, and that allows for views such as yours, Jeff, and for other views from other people to come forward to give their thoughts on what is appropriate land use for a community, given where the community is and given the goals that we have for the community. So I think when we think about, well, in the OCP for sure, yeah. And so how do we then, okay, so then how do we make sure that those get into the zoning bylaw? And so I think then that again, raising those issues through this forum, through the APC forum, through your electoral area director, through a public process from the CSRD around zoning, those kinds of things are the way to get in. And the question then is, are those mechanisms sufficient from Area F's perspective, from residents' perspective, to influence decision making? And would they be different in a difference? And can we strengthen those mechanisms then if we feel that those aren't sufficient mechanisms for bringing forward all the views that are going to then inform changes we may wish to make? And I think that it's bringing forward and developing, making sure we have all the opportunities to bring views forward, yours and those of others, is an important consideration. Let me go on and just see if there's other questions that other folks would like to ask any questions.
I don't see anything in the chat right now.
Okay, everybody's very shy. Well, take your time. We're not turning off yet, so.
feel free to write your question in the chat if you don't want to. Oh, we have someone who is raising their hand. Hello,
Looks
Jay.
like we have Jay.
Yeah. Jay, you should get a
Director
little
Simpson.
pop-up. Yeah, you got it. Okay.
Hey there. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Alan, thanks, Isabel. Appreciate you guys coming out tonight and doing this.
Sure.
Jeff, that's a good point. It's certainly not something that has come across my desk at this point regarding the storage on Squilax Anglemont. It's not something that I'm in favor of. And I've talked to the developer about that type of thing in the past. So we have to have a talk with our planning department and see what we can do about that. I mean, within the context of what we're trying to do here today, this is a part of the governance that the process is a little bit convoluted in that the CSRD has the planning department and rules the OCPs and the zoning, and we do have control over it to a certain extent. The problem is that everything just moves so slow, and the capacity to make changes at the CSRD level for something like the OCP, the official community plan there, or the zoning is, I mean, it's very small. And as Jeff mentioned, our official community plan is 15 years old, and they're supposed to be renewed every 7 years or 5 years or whatever. And I've been trying to get that to happen. Part of I guess the thing that slowed that down is that I wanted to go through this process, this community issues assessment, to try to inform some of the things that we may like to put into that official community plan. So trying to get this study done will lead us into other studies that will bring us towards an official community plan. And certainly one of the things that the province has mandated to us over the last couple of months is that we do need to review our housing study, our official community plans, and our zoning in order to get more housing into the communities. And we all recognize that housing, whether it be in the North Shuswap or Salmon Arm or Vancouver, is just a huge challenge. So that's, I mean, again, capacity at the CSRD is a challenge. And these things have to be done in the relatively short term. So we haven't gotten any indication from staff there as to how fast these things will go. But I certainly hope that these things will come in the next, I don't know, within the next year, I guess. But that doesn't take care of the storage on Squilax Anglemont Road, and it's one thing that I have had discussions with the staffing department, the planning department, and I will be talking to them again because I just found out about this from you, Jeff, earlier today. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Jay. Any other questions on services that may be problematic or that you may have issues with or that you particularly like, or any questions about decision making, how it's done, or the cost of services, or other issues that may be in the community and affecting the growth of the community, or you may kind of give you pause? And really kind of about the within the context of being an electoral area of the CSRD, and how with the CSRD as your local government, you're able to influence change, you're able to get the services that you need, and what are your views on those? Oh, Jay, go ahead. Oh, we'll let you off there.
Thanks. I mean, Alan, yeah, truly, influencing change and making changes to our services I mean, we can get that done. We have the ability to do that within the CSRD context. We can't, it's difficult to do everything that we want, and anything that we do want is just it's a very slow process. And it's based on the fact that, we have 7 different electoral areas, and we have to deal with each and every one of them. We all have issues that need to be addressed, and it takes staff time, and it's just it's a function of the way that regional districts are run. And it's frustrating from a community point of view when you have to wait for 15 years to get a new OCP. But that is how a regional district is run within the staff capacity. And yeah, we can make more staff capacity if we hire more people, but that's a money thing then, and that becomes a huge challenge as well, right? We try to keep taxes reasonable. We try to get things done within the confines of time and money, and it all comes down to time and money. And more money you throw at it, the less time it's going to take. The less money you throw at it, the more time it'll take. And that is the balancing act that we as a regional district have. And whether it's a regional district, a municipality would have the same thing. We just have more local control over the things that are priorities, whereas with a regional district, we have to fight for time and money with all of the other areas. So that's kind of, I guess, my take on that. How do we get things changed?
We have
that's.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Isabel.
No, I was just going to say we have a comment here as well in the chat, Alan. Do you want to?
Okay.
Sure. Someone says, what? I am hopeful that we are keeping our Scotch Creek. Whoops, something else popped up. Our Scotch Creek recycling facility.
Okay, perfect. So that's one, and then what's our other one say?
Okay, I find that a lot of studies are done, but then sit on a shelf. I also feel that a lot of things get pushed through by the alternative approval process, and people are not informed how that works or how it affects us. The rail trail, I think it says the rail trail from Sycamoose to Armstrong is a perfect example of that. It does not help the North Shuswap economically, but we are paying for it.
Thank you very much for that, Cynthia. I think that was very helpful comment. Thank you. And these are, by the way, these comments are more than welcome. So even if we don't have questions, thank you for making these comments. It's important to kind of have this on the record. One of the things Jay had mentioned was just kind of the nature of the federation, the nature of regional districts and in particular from an electoral area perspective, as a local government that is suited, is kind of developed or has been created, that is the regional district in its capacity as local government as electoral areas, created really to provide and to address the basic service needs of unincorporated areas. There is the capacity, as Jay mentioned, for regional districts to do more, to respond to the desire for different kinds of services, for more services, and regional districts everywhere, including CSRD, are doing that. And sometimes they do it very well, and sometimes it takes a little bit more time. But I think as communities grow and as they change in different ways, they will often look for different kinds of mechanisms and different kinds of structures to enable them to realize the kind of the services, the needs, and to address the needs that change over time. So this kind of process happening within the CSRD, within Area S, of trying to understand what some of the issues may be and some of the concerns may be around getting things too slowly or about not being responsive in certain cases, is important to hear and important to understand, because there are mechanisms even within the regional district system that can be put into place to try to make some improvements where needed. And I noticed that Cynthia, Isabel, I'll just read this. I know Cynthia has mentioned also that I also agree with Jeff. Scotch Creek is becoming a community of storage units because due to the OCP, nothing else can be developed. Economically, storage units put nothing back into communities. We have been held hostage by the OCP, no development moratorium for 15 years, and it's extremely frustrating. So OCP certainly something, and Jay's heard this, he's commented on it, certainly something that is a concern here raised this evening. So thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Jeff, for that. Any other questions or comments folks would like to either make or ask? Thank you, Krista, for agreeing. You commented agreeing with Cynthia on that. So again, kind of the growth priorities of the jurisdiction of the communities important, coming out as something that's important and setting those priorities. Well, it is 7:05, a little more efficient than we had anticipated this evening, but that is fine. I'm going to just feel free to, I'll just kind of make a few closing comments here, unless folks want to jump in with some other questions.
We've got one more question from Jeff.
Fabulous.
I will ask you to unmute, Jeff.
I did.
Great.
So the point about this alternative approval process, we just went through a thing here a couple of weeks ago for the Shuswap watershed, and that was put in as an alternative approval process years ago, I believe.
Correct.
I'm not sure how it was put in, but it was put onto our taxes, and when people were allowed to vote for it, you seen what they said they wanted to by that. And there's a couple other things within and now at the board meeting the other day, they passed to put through another 250 or 275,000 for the invasive mussel thing for that program. It's important to know that that's there, but wouldn't we have been better off to say, hey, what does the people want on our tax line? And there's a couple things on at the last meeting I was at with you. You had said there's a statutory review process for lands on our taxes. If we would like a review of that, are you aware? Remember that? Or?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I can comment on that if you like.
I just wonder so everyone how we go about doing that.
Sure. So 2 points there. Let me address, if I could, just in response to Jeff's questions. Thank you for the questions. Just to make sure everybody's on the same page, I know that Cynthia and Krista and Jeff have commented and referred to the alternative approval process, or the AAP process. So this process used to be kind of referred to as the counter petition process, but is the AAP now under the legislation. What this process says, in essence, it kind of, if we take a little bit of a step back, certain decisions that are taken by the local government, in this case, the regional district, but it also applies often in municipalities. But if we look at the regional district as the local government for Area F, certain decisions that are taken by the regional district must get the assent of the electors. That is, people must agree to the decisions that are being proposed in certain cases. So the establishment of a service, for example, the borrowing of certain monies, those kinds of things. When we, the Shuswap Watershed Council, that was a service that was set up with a sunset clause. It was set up a number of years ago. It had a sunset clause, so it was coming to an end. So the regional district needed to determine, do we now kind of go back and ask for assent? And there are two different ways to ask for assent or to ask for agreement from the public. One is to propose the decision and to say, we're going to do this unless a certain number of people come back and say we disagree. So that's the alternative approval process. The bar that has to be met is 10% of voters have to register their disagreement, have to say, I disagree. If 10% is met, if that threshold is met, then the local government, the regional district, has an option. It can say, okay, we can either kill the decision and move on and do something else, or we can hold a referendum. So the referendum is, or the vote is another way to get the assent of the electors. And a local government can go directly to referendum, or it can go to it after testing the waters, if you will, through an alternative approval process. The AAP is a legitimate way of seeking assent of the electors, and it's a legal way. It doesn't always sit well with folks, either in regional districts or in electoral municipalities. But it's the one that the board, I suppose, felt that it was going to use in this case, and it sounds like it's kind of gone through on that. The statutory review, that is the other question that Jeff had with respect to that. When we think of different ways, different mechanisms to address issues that may arise, that may be brought to our attention through this process, for example, these questions that have been brought up this evening, the comments that have been brought up. So different issues that arise with respect to services or how decisions are made. But let's focus on services. We want to look at different mechanisms, different ways different changes we can suggest to the system to address some of the concerns that are brought forward. If concerns are brought forward about a particular service, one change or one remedy available to electoral areas is to have what's called a statutory review of that service. Every jurisdiction, whether you're a municipality or an electoral area, every jurisdiction in every regional district has the ability through its elected official to initiate a service review. And that ability is written into the legislation. So your electoral area director can initiate in writing to the board a review of any service offered by the regional district that you participate in. That review then kicks off a process. It's a formal process of, or that initiation kicks off a review process, a very formal process that sets out to identify the concerns of the area that triggered the review, plus any concerns that other areas may have. There's a series of often an outsider is brought in to conduct the review. The results go to the board. The results go to the ministry, which has to be interested in the review because it's under the legislation. And there has to be a resolution of the review. And it's not just a matter of kind of presenting the results of the review and changes that you want to make to the service as a result of the review. It's not just a matter of presenting those to the board and the board saying, okay, we're not interested, go away. There are mechanisms in the legislation or safeguards in the legislation which say instead, once changes are proposed through the review process to the regional board, there has to be a resolution reached, and that can go to mediation, it can go to arbitration. It's an onerous process. It's not one to be taken lightly, but every director has the right to initiate a review. So if there is a service that is being delivered to, or the UR Area F or any other area is paying into as a participant, and there are concerns with that service, that area can initiate a review of that service to find changes to the service that make the service more responsive to the needs of that area, whatever those needs are, whether they relate to how decisions are made, whether they relate to what exactly the service provides, or whether they relate to the cost of the service. So all of those things are referred to as the terms of participation. If a service review results in a dissatisfied or a level of dissatisfaction, if the service review does nothing to address the needs, from most services, an individual jurisdiction can then initiate service withdrawal. They can leave the service. Not in all cases, but in most cases, most services allow for withdrawal of a member from that service. It's a lengthy process. And again, it's not to be kind of taken lightly, and it's designed to be lengthy and to be somewhat onerous because breaking up services can be difficult to do, and it can be costly to those involved. But it is a remedy that is there to address concerns in cases where discussion, where other kind of less formal ways of trying to effect change have failed.
We have another comment popping up here.
Excellent. Do you want to read it, Isabel?
Yeah. During the wildfires last year, resources afterwards were not in the North Shuswap. People had to go to Salmon Arm. not possible for everyone. There also was a huge breakdown in communication during that time. Studies had been done for evacuation routes, but again, never implemented or improved upon. And now we're doing another study.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. I understand the question. I understand the comment. I also understand that I believe the CSRD is going to be coming to Area F and having some sessions to understand kind of the concerns and to hear the concerns and to try to address the concerns around the wildfires. So that process will begin. It's I don't have the exact dates on the meetings, but and the town halls that are going to be held, but I understand from speaking to CSRD staff that those are in the works. So I'm hoping that you and others from Area F, who in the entire community, of course, was impacted by the wildfires, will have an opportunity to address some of those concerns. Very reasonable concerns to put forward. Probably not the best place for me to try to address them because there's not much I can say on those other than to kind of note those and make sure that those are kind of on the record in my study. What I will be doing just in terms of the process going forward from this point, as I mentioned, we've got our survey, so I really encourage people to go and fill that out. We've got quite a few responses. It's a very active community and a lot of interest, so that's great. So we'd like to get some more. We'll get those in. We will then compile all that information and we'll put that together with the information that we've received this evening from folks here, the questions, the comments from people this evening. We'll combine, and also with the number of questions and comments that were made at the 2 town hall meetings or open houses in January that were held in person in North Shuswap. We'll bring all of that together along with our documentation of the existing services, of the governance in place, of the costs that are in place, bring all of that together. Find then or identify in a separate chapter of the report, then identify based on the concerns that have been raised by the public, we'll identify possible changes that can be made within the current structure, within the regional district system, or the current system that has electoral area F as an unincorporated electoral area within the regional district. We'll look to bring forward changes, to recommend changes that can be made to try to address some of the concerns that have been raised today in the previous meetings and through the survey materials. All of that information will go forward in a report. It'll be submitted by the end of March to the CSRD. It will also be submitted to the province. A copy of the report will be available online on the website. So it'll be very transparent. Everything the board sees, everything the province sees will be downloadable by residents and anybody else who goes to the website. So all of that will be there. And we will we'll then kind of wrap up the study from that point and look to implementation of the recommendations that are taken forward. Jay's asked, when will this recording be available on the website? We will tomorrow send the recording to the communications people at CSRD, who will then post it on the website within the next couple of days. So please go to the site. Please download all the materials that you like. Please have a look at the survey. And I want to thank everybody for taking the time to come out this evening and to provide, to listen to me speak, first of all, but also to provide some of the comments that we've got there. And I should mention, just as a final word, if you have other comments too, and you've already filled out the survey, please go to the website. There's a place to leave questions, to leave comments, and we'll be happy to address those through the website as well. And thank you. Just one more point from Cynthia. Permit processes take too long and some of the requirements are very expensive and in my opinion, make work projects. I've heard we are one of the most difficult areas to build in. That may be the case. I can't comment on that. I know that a number of jurisdictions are struggling with permit processes. CSRD, based on Cynthia's comment, may be one of them. And so thank you. We'll make sure that comment is reflected as well. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time and look forward to connecting again once we have provided the report. Take care.